learning outcomes. After reading this module, you shall be able to know the concept of economic planning, appreciate the need and significance of different economic planning in different economic system, evaluate the role of planning vis-a-vis different economic system, understand the process and system of planning in India. Now, what is economic planning? Economic planning may be defined as a continuous process which involves decision relating to alternative ways of utilizing the available resources for achieving particular goals for a specified time period. It is taken by central government in a country. There are two major agencies which are responsible for economic planning in India. It is known as planning machinery, which is given. Now next is, what are the objectives of economic planning in India? The first objective is to increase the national income. The first objective is to increase production to the maximum possible extent as to achieve higher level of national income to remove poverty. The target is set both in terms of desirable rate of growth. The second objective is full employment. The employment objective has two components. First, provision of employment to all job seekers. Second, gradual transfer of people from low income jobs to high income jobs. The third objective is reduction in inequalities of income and wealth. This objective is to create a more equitable distribution of income and wealth. It is to be achieved mainly by increasing the incomes of low income groups. The next objective is social justice. Economic planning in India also seeks to set up a socialist society based on equality and justice free from exploitation. Next is the other objectives: removal of poverty, modernization of the economy, maximizing the usage of resources by area, achieving price competitiveness, and plan stability by lowering protection and reducing the gap between demand and supply. Next is the Planning Commission in India. Planning Commission in India is established in 1950. It is a statutory body set up to formulate basic economic plans and policies. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was the first chairman of the Planning Commission. It includes an advisory board which was established in 1965, which includes experts representing a cross section of the Indian economy, and National Development Council, which was established in 1951. Chief Ministers of the states together with the members of Planning Commission constitute the National Development Council. The Prime Minister of India resides over this council. Next in discussion is the 5-year plans. The development plans are drawn by the Planning Commission to establish India's economy on a socialistic pattern in successive phases of 5-year period called the 5-year plans. It consists of the following: first, the Planning Commission of India; second, the National Planning Council; third, National Development Council and State Planning Commission. Next, we will discuss upon the goals of 5-year plans. First, growth; next, modernization; next, self-reliance, and the last is equity. Since 1951, India has completed 10th 5-year plans. 11th plan is currently under execution. The guiding principles of the India's 5-year plan are provided by the basic objectives of growth, employment, self-reliance and social justice. Apart from these objectives, each 5-year plan takes into account the new constraints and possibilities faced during the period and attempts to make necessary directional changes and emphasis. During the first 5-year plan, that is 1951 to 56, India was facing 3 major problems. First, influx of refugees; next, severe food crisis, and last, mounting inflation. India had also to correct the disequilibrium in the economy caused by the Second World War and partition of the country. Therefore, the first plan emphasized as its immediate objectives and rehabilitation of refugees, rapid agriculture development so as to achieve food self-sufficiency in the shortest possible time and inflation control. The second plan from 1956 to 61 started in an atmosphere of economic stability. Agricultural targets fixed in first plan had been achieved. Poverty level had registered a fall, and consequently it was felt that the Indian economy had reached a stage where agriculture could be assigned a lower priority and a forward thrust should be made in the development of heavy and basic industries of the economy for more rapid advance in future. The third plan, which is from 1961 to 66, gave top priority to agriculture, but it also laid adequate emphasis on development of basic industries, which were vitally necessary for rapid economic development of the country. However, because of India's conflict with China in 1962 and Pakistan in 1965, the approach of the third plan was later shifted from development to defense. The fourth plan, which was from 1969 to 74, aimed at an average 5.5% growth rate in national income and the provision of national minimum for the weaker sections of the community. The later came to be known as the objectives of growth with justice and Garibi Hatao, that is removal of poverty. The fifth plan, which is from 1974 to 79, strategies launching a direct attack on the problems of unemployment, massive low-end poverty, but this approach was eventually abandoned and final draft of the fifth plan prepared and launched by D.P. Dhar proposed to achieve the two main objectives, that is removal of poverty and attainment of self-reliance. The sixth plan, ranging from 1980 to 85, was launched with its inherent approach, attack on the problem of poverty by creating conditions of expanding economy. The seventh plan from 1985 to 90 sought to emphasize policies and programs which would accelerate the growth in food grain production, increase employment opportunity and raise productivity. All these three immediate objectives were regarded central to the achievements of long-term goals determined as far as the first plan itself. The eighth plan from 1992 to 97 was approved at the time the country was going through a severe economic crisis caused by a balance of payments, a rising debt burden, ever widening budget deficits, maintaining inflation and recession in industry. The Narasimha Rao government initiated the process of fiscal reforms as also of economic reforms with a view to provide a new dynamism to the economic reforms. The ninth five-year plan from 1997 to 2000 was developed in the context of four important dimensions of state policy, that is quality of life, generation of productive employment, regional balance and self-reliance. This plan focused on accelerated growth, recognizing a special role for agriculture for its stronger poverty, reducing and employment generating effects, which will be carried out over a period of 15 years. Similarly, the 10th plan 2002 to 7 provides an opportunity at the start of the new millennium. Next, we will discuss upon the 11th plan, that is from 2007 to 2012. First, roads to all villages that have a population of 1000 and above by 2009, increased forest and tree cover by 5%, achieve the World Health Organization standard of air quality in major cities by 2011 and 12, treat all urban wastewater by 2011 to 12 to clean river waters, increase energy efficiency by 20% by 2016 and 17. Planning in different economic system. The nature of planning depends upon the type of economic system, that is capitalism. A free market economy is an economic system in which private individuals own the material means for production for the purpose of profit, like USA and Great Britain. Socialist, it is an economic system in which the material means of production owned by the whole community or society. Examples of countries are Poland and Hungary. Or mixed economy. Mixed economy is an economic system in which the material means of production owned by both private and community public sector, like India's economic system. Another discussion is on planning in capitalist economy. Under this economic system, planning is more inductive and democratic in nature. State interventions is limited for formulation of a plan and adoption of indirect controls. The state can only issue guidelines and not directives. This type of planning has limited effectiveness. Second, planning in socialist economy. In the socialist system, planning is of an imperative type and it is totalitarian in nature. Detailed targets are laid down for different industries. Apart from these, additional growth strategies and project objectives are also considered in this type of economic system. Production units are obliged to follow the plan. These production units are controlled by state. Next is planning in mixed economy. Planning is very difficult in this type of economy. On the one hand, planning has to be meaningful, cannot be merely of an indicative type, nor it can be of an imperative nature in the absence of state control on the means of production. Next, we will discuss upon what are the achievements of planning in India. Development of economic infrastructure, diversification of exports and import substitution, development of science and technology, development of education system, increase in national and per capita income, progress in agriculture, progress in the use of agricultural inputs, increased agricultural production. Now, next is a discussion upon the fundamental failures of planning. Progress in industry, failure to eliminate poverty, failure to provide employment, failure to reduce inequalities of income and wealth, failure to check the growth of black money. Now, in depth, we will discuss upon the failure of the planning process. Instead of showing high growth, high public savings and a high degree of self-reliance, India was actually showing one of the lowest rates of growth in the developing world with the rising public deficit and a periodic balance of payment crisis. Between 1950 and 1990, India's growth rate averaged less than 4% per annum, and this was at a time when the developing world, including sub-Saharan Africa and other least developed countries, showed a growth rate of 5.2% per annum. An important assumption in the choice of post-independence development strategy was the generation of public savings, which could be used for higher and higher levels of investment. However, this did not happen, and the public sector, instead of being a generator of savings for the community's good time and over time a consumer of community's savings. This reversal of roles had become evident by the early 70s, and the process reached its culmination by the early 80s. By then, the government began to borrow not only to meet its revenue expenditure but also to finance public sector deficits and investments. During 1960 to 1975, total public sector borrowings averaged 4.4% of GDP. This increased to 6% of GDP by 1980 to 81 and further to 9% by 1989 to 90. Thus, the public sector, which was supposed to generate resources for the growth of the rest of the economy, gradually became a net drain on the society as a whole. Now, there are some reasons for the deterioration of the public sector in India. The first reason being the legal system in India is such that it provides full protection to the private interest of the so-called public servant, often at the expense of the public that he or she is supposed to serve. In addition to complete job security, any group of public servants in any public sector organization can go on strike in search of higher wages, promotions and bonuses for themselves, irrespective of the cost and inconvenience caused to the public. problems have become worse over time and there is little or no accountability of the public servant to perform the public duty. The next reason is the authority of government at both center and states to enforce their decision has eroded over time. Government can pass order, for example, for reallocation of unauthorized industrial units or other structures. I repeat, but implementation can be delayed if they run counter to public interest of some at the expense of general public interest. The third reason is the process and procedures for conducting business in government and public service organizations over time have become non-functional. There are multiplicity of departments involved in the simplest of decisions. Administrative rules generally concentrate on the process rather than results. There is very little decentralization of decision-making powers, particularly financial powers. Thus, while local authorities have given significant authority in some states for implementing national programmers, their financial authority is limited. Hence, during early 90s, it was imperative for India to correct its clearly faulty developmental process. There have been several reasons put forward for the failure of the development path which necessitated the reforms of Manmohan Singh in 1991. Next is the discussion on the 12th 5-year plan from 2012 to 17. The 12th plan commenced at a time when the global economy was growing through a second financial crisis, precipitated by the sovereign debt problems of the Eurozone which erupted in the last year of the 11th plan. The crisis affected all countries including India. Our growth slowed down to 6.2% in 2011 and 12 and the deceleration continued into the first year of the 12th plan, when the economy is estimated to have grown by only 5%. The 12th plan therefore emphasizes first priority must to bring the economy back to rapid growth while ensuring that the growth is both inclusive and sustainable. The broad vision and aspirations which the 12th plan seeks to fulfill are reflected in the subtitle Faster, Sustainable and More Inclusive Growth. Inclusiveness is to be achieved through poverty reduction, promoting group equality and regional balance, reducing inequality, empowering people, etc. Whereas sustainability includes ensuring environmental sustainability, development of human capital through improved health, education, skill development, nutrition, information technology, etc. and development of institutional capabilities, infrastructure like power, telecommunication, roads, transport, etc. Apart from the global slowdown, the domestic economy has also run up against several internal constraints. Macroeconomic imbalances have surfaced following the fiscal expansion undertaken after 2008 to give a fiscal stimulus to the economy. Inflationary pressures have built up. Major investment projects in energy and transport have slowed down because of a change of implementation problems. Some changes in the tax treatment in the 2012 and 13 have caused uncertainty among investors. These developments have produced a reduction in the rate of investment and a slowing down of economic growth. The policy challenge in the 12th plan is therefore twofold. The immediate challenge is to reverse the observed deceleration in growth by reviving investment as quickly as possible. This calls for urgent action to tackle implementation constraints in infrastructure which are holding up large projects, combined with action to deal with tax related issues which have created uncertainty in the investment climate. From a longer term perspective, the plan must put in place policies that can leverage the many strengths of the economy to bring it back to its real growth potential. Immediate priority is to revive the investor sentiment along with short-term action for removing the impediments to implementation of projects in infrastructure, especially in the area of energy, which will require addressing the issue of fuel supply to power stations, financial problems of DISCOM and clarity in terms of new exploration licensing policy. Although planning should cover both the activities of the government and those of the private sector, a great deal of the public debate on planning in India takes place around the size of the public sector plan. The 12th plan lays out an ambitious set of government programs which will help to achieve the objective of rapid and inclusive growth. In view of the scarcity of resources, it is essential to take bold steps to improve the efficiency of public expenditure through planned programs. Need for fiscal correction with tax reforms like GST, reduction of subsidies as percent of GDP while still allowing for targeting subsidies that advance the cause of inclusiveness, and managing the current account deficit will be another chief concerns. Achieving sustained growth will require long-term increase in investment and savings. Bringing the economy back to 9% growth by the end of the 12th plan requires fixed investment rate to rise to 35% of GDP by the end of plan period. This will require action to revive private investment, including private corporate investment, and also action to stimulate public investment, especially in key areas of infrastructure, especially energy, transport, water supply and water resource management. Reversal of the combined deterioration in government and corporate savings has to be a key element in the strategy. Now let us have a look at the sectoral allocation of resources. Energy, transport and social services account for about 70% of the total outlay, with the individual shares of 19%, 16% and 35% respectively, and compared to 11th plan, their outlay increased by 110%, 96% and 112% respectively. Comparison between the economic planning of India and US. Since US is a developed country and India is a developing economy, therefore the targets of both the economies are different. India's economic plans are those which are already achieved by the US economy. US planning starts during First World War, which was 1914 to 1918. On the other hand, India's economic planning starts in 1950. The first plan was 1951 to 56. Central Planning Authority of India is Planning Commission, where name is changed to Niti Aayog, and Central Planning Authority of US is Feudal Government. Failure of economic planning of India is more than the failure of planning in US. Financing of plan in India depends upon external borrowing, but US depends upon exports and in some cases on external borrowings. But the dependence on external borrowing is more in India. Now the current analysis. The economy of India boasts of being the fourth largest economy in the world after the United States, China and Japan. The country's per capita GDP measured in PPP was $3,500 in 2010 and ranked at 161, making it a lower middle income economy. The country recorded the highest growth rates and touched to as 9% GDP in the mid 2000s. It was then considered by many financial institutions as one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Notably, the robust growth rate reduced poverty by about 10 percentage points by mid 2000. But the overview of Indian economy was hit by global slowdown in 2008. Its speed of growth received a jerk and the country's GDP slowed down to a large extent thereafter. Government of India has projected growth rate for 2011 to 12 at 8.2% of GDP compared to 8.5% registered last year. However, given the current European economic crisis and high inflation at domestic level, expected growth rate of 8.2% looks quite good. As regards inflation, it has been a major concern for the government to rein in. The inflation for over 5 years has crippled the economy. In 2005, the company witnessed inflation as low as 4%. Thereafter, the graph has been constantly rising. At many times, inflation has reached to double digit. Several monetary measures are being taken by the government and the central bank to control the menace, but in vain. However, government expects that there will be some relief starting from November and will decline to 6.5% in March 2012. India is the 20th largest merchandise trading nation. The country's exports were worth $19,870 million by October in 2011 and 12, amounting to 22% of country's GDP. Gems and jewelry constitute the single largest export item, that is 16% of total export. However, it is feared that global economic crisis and appreciation of rupee may hit domestic export adversely in future. According to Global Competitiveness Report 2000 released by World Economic Forum, India has slipped to its rank to 51 from 49 in 2009. According to World Economic Outlook 2010 released by International Monetary Fund, China is ahead of India in terms of growth. The GDP exceeded the government's target in China and is estimated to be close to 10% in 2011. Let us summarize our discussion. Since independence, India has been a mixed economy. India's large public sectors were responsible for rendering the country a mixed economy feature. India's economic planning is associated with capitalist framework with no element of compulsion. Indian economy overview was highly inspired by Soviet Union's practices post-independence. It had been recording growth rate not greater than 5 jumped till 1980s. This stagnant growth rate termed by many economists as Hindu growth rate. In 1992, the country ushered into liberalization regime. Thereafter, the economy started scaling upward. This new trend in growth was called New Hindu Growth Rate.